My name is Juliana, and I am 45 years old. The air in the funeral home was thick with the cloying scent of lilies and the heavier stench of feigned grief. From my vantage point at the back of the room, hidden by a large floral arrangement and the anonymity of a dark coat and sunglasses, I watched my life being eulogized. 10 years ago, a sudden avalanche in the Sierra Nevada had swept me off a mountain and, according to the world, out of existence. Today, my family had gathered for a 10-year memorial service to honor the woman they thought was long dead. My husband, Eamon, stood at the podium, his voice thick with a well-rehearsed sorrow. My daughter, Calla, now a young woman of 18, sat in the front row, her head bowed. And next to her, in the seat that should have been empty, sat Genevieve, my husband's new wife, my daughter's new mother, and the woman wearing my grandmother's diamond necklace. I never thought I would see this day. I never thought I would return. But a forgotten memory and a shocking online discovery had pulled me back from the edge of the world. They were here to bury my memory for good. They had no idea I was here to resurrect it. If you're watching this right now, drop a comment letting me know where you are viewing from. Before I tell you about the moment I stepped out of the shadows and back into my own life, hit like and subscribe to hear more true stories of survival, betrayal, and the shocking secrets that families keep. 10 years ago, my life was one of quiet, profound happiness. I was a landscape architect, a job that allowed me to find beauty in the chaos of nature and bring it into people's lives. My husband, Eamon, was a history professor at the local university, a kind, brilliant man who was my partner in every sense of the word. Our world revolved around our 8-year-old daughter, Calla, a bright, curious girl with my eyes and her father's love for old books. We lived in a beautiful old Victorian house with a sprawling garden that was my personal canvas, a place where I cultivated rare flowers and taught Calla the names of every plant. Our life wasn't perfect, but it was deeply good. The only shadow was Eamon's younger brother, Duncan. He was a financial advisor with expensive tastes and a restless, envious energy. He was a frequent presence in our home, always charming on the surface, but I often caught him looking at our life, our house, our happiness, with a flicker of something cold and covetous in his eyes. "He just wishes he had what you have," Eamon would say with a forgiving shrug. "He'll find his way." My annual solo hiking trip was a tradition, my 1 week a year to disconnect and recharge in the wilderness. That September, I chose a remote, challenging section of the Pacific Crest Trail in the High Sierras. I was an experienced hiker, meticulous in my preparations, but no amount of preparation could have accounted for the freak early-season blizzard that descended on the mountain with breathtaking speed and violence. I remember the world turning white, the trail disappearing, the wind screaming in my ears. I took shelter in a small rock alcove, planning to wait it out. The last thing I remember is the roar, a sound that seemed to come from the mountain itself, and then a crushing weight and a sensation of falling into a deep, cold darkness. The official search lasted for 3 weeks. They found my shredded backpack and a broken trekking pole at the edge of a deep, snow-filled crevice, evidence that I had been caught in a significant avalanche. The search was eventually called off, the terrain deemed too dangerous for the rescue teams. Because there was overwhelming evidence of a specific peril, an event from which survival was impossible, Eamon was able to petition the court. 6 months after I disappeared, a judge legally declared me dead. My life, as I knew it, was over. I awoke to the smell of pine smoke and the rough texture of a wool blanket against my cheek. I was in a small, rustic cabin, and an old man with a long gray beard was stirring a pot over a wood stove. My body
ached with a pain so deep it felt like it had settled into my bones. But the most terrifying discovery was the emptiness in my own mind. I didn't know my name. I didn't know where I was from. I had no memory of the person I had been. My past was a complete and utter blank. The man's name was Ansel. He was a retired park ranger who lived a solitary, off-the-grid existence in a remote corner of the national forest. He had found me half frozen and unconscious at the bottom of a ravine, weeks after the blizzard, miles from where the official search had taken place. He had carried me back to his cabin, and with his old-world knowledge of medicine and herbs, nursed me back to health. "You had a bad fall," he told me, his voice a low rumble. "A nasty knock on the head. Sometimes the memories come back, sometimes they don't." He called me Wren after the small, resilient birds that flitted around his cabin. For 10 years, I was Wren. I lived a quiet, simple life with Ansel, a life dictated by the seasons. We chopped wood, tended his garden, fished in the nearby stream, and read old books by candlelight. The physical wounds healed, but the amnesia remained, a wall between me and my past. The only clues were the nightmares, fragmented images of a little girl with my eyes, a man's gentle smile, and the suffocating terror of being crushed by snow. I learned to live with the emptiness, to build a new identity from scratch. Wren was quiet, capable, and at peace with the silence of the mountains. But Juliana, the woman that I had been, was still buried deep inside, waiting for a key to unlock the door. The key came in the most unexpected way. Ansel, now in his early 80s, suffered a severe heart attack. For the first time in a decade, I had to leave our secluded valley and get him to a hospital in the nearest town, a place I had never been. After leaving him in the care of the doctors, I wandered through the small town in a daze, the noise and bustle of civilization a shock to my system. I passed a florist's shop, and a flower in the window display made me stop in my tracks. It was a rose, a unique variety with delicate blush pink petals that deepened to a soft apricot at the center. I knew that rose. A name surfaced from the depths of my memory, as clear as a bell. Calla's Dawn. And with the name, the dam broke. It was a violent, agonizing flood. 10 years of lost memories crashed into me at once. Eamon, Calla, our home, the garden, the hiking trip, the avalanche, my name, Juliana. I collapsed onto a nearby bench, gasping for breath, the world spinning around me as two lives, Wren and Juliana, collided in my mind. That night, in a small motel room, I used the spotty Wi-Fi to search for my family. I found Eamon's faculty page at the university. He was still there. And then I found the announcement, a short, tasteful article in the local online newspaper. Memorial service to be held for Juliana Croft 10 years after tragic hiking accident. It was scheduled for 2 days from now. The article included a recent family photo, Eamon looking older and sadder, Calla, a beautiful young woman on the cusp of adulthood, and standing between them, her hand possessively on my husband's arm, was a woman I didn't recognize. The caption read, "Eamon Croft with his wife, Genevieve, and daughter, Calla." His wife. The word was a knife in my gut. He had remarried, and that woman was wearing my grandmother's necklace. I knew then that I had to go back. I had to know what had become of the life I had left behind and who these people were who had taken my place.
I used the last of the cash Ansel kept in the cabin to buy a bus ticket, a cheap coat, and a pair of sunglasses. The journey back was a surreal pilgrimage through a country that was both familiar and alien. Every road sign, every small town sparked a new cascade of memories. I felt like a ghost, a specter traveling back to a life that no longer had a place for me. I arrived on the morning of the memorial service. The funeral home was exactly as I remembered it from my father's service years ago. I slipped in unnoticed, my face partially hidden by my coat collar, and took a seat in the back. The room was filled with familiar faces, old friends, former neighbors, Eamon's colleagues from the university. They had all aged, their faces etched with the 10 years I had lost. Eamon's eulogy was a masterpiece of loving sentiment. He spoke of my passion for life, my kindness, my devotion as a mother and wife. He painted a picture of a perfect marriage tragically cut short. Watching him, I felt a confusing mix of emotions. He seemed genuinely heartbroken, yet he had a new wife. How could both be true? Then, Calla stepped up to the podium. She was so tall, so poised. She spoke of the vague, dreamlike memories she had of me, the scent of lavender in the garden, the feel of my hand in hers, the sound of me reading her bedtime stories. "My mother, Genevieve, has been wonderful," she said, smiling at the woman in the front row. "She has helped me remember the mother I lost. She has filled a void I thought would never be filled." The words were like a physical blow. This woman had not just taken my husband, she had taken my daughter. My Calla, my little girl, was calling another woman mother? It was after the service, during the quiet reception, that I made my move. People were mingling, sharing memories, sipping coffee. Eamon was standing with his brother, Duncan, and his new wife, Genevieve. I watched as Duncan clapped him on the back, a gesture that looked more proprietary than supportive. I saw Genevieve adjust the diamond necklace, my necklace, with a smug little smile. I took off my sunglasses and started walking towards them. I moved slowly, deliberately. The first person to see me was an old neighbor, Mrs. Gable. Her teacup slipped from her fingers and shattered on the floor. Her hand flew to her mouth, her eyes wide with disbelief. A murmur rippled through the room as heads began to turn. The conversations faltered, then stopped completely. A wave of silence followed me as I walked. I stopped a few feet from my family. Eamon was the last to see me. He was laughing at something Duncan had said. He turned, a smile still on his face, and then he saw me. The color drained from his face. His smile vanished, replaced by an expression of pure, uncomprehending shock. Genevieve's hand, which had been resting on his arm, tightened into a claw. Duncan looked as if he had seen a ghost, which in a way he had. "Eamon," I said, my voice clear and steady in the silent room. It was the first time I had spoken his name in 10 years. He swayed on his feet, his eyes rolling back in his head, and then, in the middle of my memorial service, my husband fainted. The chaos that erupted was instantaneous. People gasped, someone screamed, and a few of Eamon's colleagues rushed forward to help him. Genevieve knelt beside him, her face a mask of frantic concern, while Duncan just stared at me, his face ashen. Calla stood frozen, her eyes wide with a mixture of fear and a dawning, impossible hope. "Mom?" she whispered, the word a question, not a statement. I took a step towards her, my heart aching to hold her, but Genevieve shot up, placing herself between us like a shield. "Who are you?" she demanded, her voice sharp with panic. "This is a private event. You need to leave." "I think, Genevieve, that I have more right to be here than you do," I replied, my gaze dropping pointedly to the necklace at her throat. Her hand instinctively flew up to cover it,
The gasps from the onlookers grew louder. People were beginning to recognize me, to see past the 10 years of aging and hardship etched onto my face. "It can't be," I heard someone whisper. "Juliana?" Paramedics arrived and began attending to Eamon, who was slowly regaining consciousness. The director of the funeral home, a man flustered beyond belief, was trying to clear the room. I ignored the chaos, my focus entirely on my daughter. Calla was still staring at me, her young face a canvas of conflicting emotions. "It's really me, sweetheart," I said softly, tears finally blurring my vision. "I'm home." She took a hesitant step towards me, then another, but before she could reach me, my father-in-law, Alistair, a man I had always respected, stepped in front of me. His face was grim. "Juliana, if this is truly you, we need to go somewhere private. Now." He, along with Duncan, helped a still-dazed Eamon to his feet. Genevieve hovered anxiously. My father-in-law took charge, leading our fractured family group into a small, private waiting room, away from the prying eyes of the other guests. The moment the door closed, the accusations began. "This is a trick," Genevieve shrieked, pointing a trembling finger at me. "She's an imposter, a con artist trying to get the inheritance." "Genevieve, be quiet," Eamon mumbled, leaning heavily on his brother. He looked at me, his eyes filled with a pain and confusion that seemed genuine. "How? We searched for you. They said no one could have survived." "I fell," I explained, my voice flat. I was injured. I had amnesia. For 10 years, I didn't know who I was." "Amnesia?" Duncan scoffed, a sneer twisting his lips. "How convenient! You show up on the exact day of your memorial, just as the last of the estate is being settled." "The estate?" I asked, my eyes narrowing. "What about the estate?" It was Genevieve who answered, her voice dripping with possessiveness. "Eamon and I have been managing your assets since you were declared dead. As his wife, I am the joint beneficiary." "The assets are nearly gone, aren't they?" I said, the pieces beginning to click into place. "The life insurance, the investments, it's mostly gone. That's why you're here, Duncan? You helped them spend it?" Duncan's face went rigid. "That's a slanderous accusation." "Is it? I seem to recall you pitching a high-risk tech investment to Eamon just before I left. A company that went bankrupt 6 months later. Let me guess, you got him to invest my life insurance payout in it?" Eamon flinched. A silent admission of guilt. He wouldn't meet my eyes. "We had to move on, Julie," he whispered. "I thought you were gone. I was alone. I was grieving. Genevieve was there for me. And my money was there for both of you," I countered, my voice hard. "This is all very complicated," my father-in-law said, ever the diplomat. "The first thing we need to do is confirm your identity. A DNA test? That won't be necessary." A new voice said from the doorway. A man in a sharp, dark suit stepped into the room. He was older, with a kind, intelligent face. "My name is Mr. Calla, and I was Juliana's estate lawyer. And as per the instructions in her will, I have been waiting for this day." He looked directly at Eamon, Genevieve, and Duncan. Their faces went from panicked to terrified. "What are you talking about?" Eamon stammered. "Juliana was a meticulous planner," Mr. Calla explained calmly. "Given the risks of her solo hiking trips, she put a specific, rather unusual clause in her will. In the event of her disappearance and a declaration of death without a body being recovered, her entire estate was to be held in a state of suspension in a blind trust for a period of 10 years. He paused, letting the words sink in.
No assets were to be liquidated. No major financial changes were to be made. Her will would only officially be executed on the 10th anniversary of her declared death. That day is today. All of the assets you have been spending, Eamon, were technically borrowed against an estate that was not yet yours. An estate that, as of this moment, still belongs to its very much alive owner. The silence in the room was so complete, I could hear the frantic beating of my own heart. Genevieve let out a small, strangled gasp. Duncan looked like he was about to be physically ill. Eamon just stared at Mr. Calla, his face a mask of utter devastation. The trust? But the lawyers, they said... He stammered. They said the estate transferred to me. The probate court granted you control as the surviving spouse, yes, Mr. Calla clarified. But they were not aware of the private trust Juliana established with my firm, a trust that legally supersedes the standard probate process in this specific and, admittedly, bizarre circumstance. Juliana's primary will, the one the court saw, was designed to manage her affairs. The trust was designed to protect them. He opened his briefcase and pulled out a thick, leather-bound document. According to this trust, which is legally ironclad, you and your brother have illegally liquidated and misappropriated approximately $1.8 million of Juliana's assets. Genevieve found her voice, a high-pitched shriek of denial. We used that money to raise her daughter, to maintain her home. Did you? Mr. Calla asked, raising a skeptical eyebrow. He pulled out another file. My records indicate the sale of Juliana's secondary properties, the liquidation of her stock portfolio, and a series of substantial investments made through a shell corporation registered to your brother, Duncan. The funds were then funneled into a variety of high-end purchases, including the ski chalet in Aspen, 2 luxury vehicles, and this. He held up a glossy photo of the diamond necklace around Genevieve's neck. A piece of jewelry valued at over $80,000. I failed to see how any of that contributed to Calla's upbringing. Calla, who had been watching this exchange with wide, terrified eyes, finally spoke. You sold her properties? You sold the lake house? She asked Eamon, her voice trembling. You told me we had to sell it because we couldn't afford the taxes after Mom was gone. We needed the liquidity, Calla, Eamon said weakly, for investments. Duncan said it was a smart move. All eyes turned to Duncan, who was now sweating profusely. The market was volatile. No one could have predicted the downturn. The market didn't have a downturn, Duncan, I said, cold as ice. Your shell company did. You created a fake investment firm, convinced your grieving, vulnerable brother to pour my money into it, and then declared bankruptcy, pocketing the cash. It was fraud. You can't prove that, he blustered. Actually, we can, Mr. Calla said calmly. As part of my duties as the trustee, I have been monitoring the estate's finances for the past decade. We hired a forensic accountant 3 years ago when we first noticed the irregularities. We have a complete record of every transaction. We were simply waiting for the 10-year mark to act. We just didn't expect Juliana to show up and make our job so much easier. This was the final blow. Genevieve sank into a chair, her face buried in her hands.
Duncan looked around the room like a trapped animal, searching for an escape that didn't exist. Eamon, my husband, the man I had loved and trusted, finally looked at me. The shame in his eyes was absolute. I didn't know, Julie, about the fraud. I swear, I thought the investments were real. I was just lost. And he was my brother. I trusted him.
You trusted him with my money, with our daughter's future, I countered. And you let this woman move into my home, wear my clothes, and try to replace me in my own daughter's heart? Calla started to cry, silent tears streaming down her face. I moved towards her, but Genevieve shot up again. Don't you touch her. I'm the one who has been here for her. I raised her. You have no right to just walk back in here and reclaim her. I have every right, I said, my voice hardening. I am her mother. You are the woman who helped to spin her inheritance. I finally reached Calla and knelt in front of her, ignoring the venomous glare from Genevieve. I know this is confusing and scary, I said softly, taking her hands in mine. I have missed you every single day for 10 years, even when I didn't know who I was missing. I love you more than anything. She looked from my face to Eamon's, then to Genevieve's, her world completely fractured. You have to choose, Calla, Genevieve said, her voice sharp with desperation. Her or the mother who has been by your side for the last 8 years? It was a cruel, impossible demand to make of a child. Before Calla could answer, my father-in-law spoke, his voice booming with an authority that silenced the room. That is enough, Genevieve. Calla will not be forced to choose. This woman, he said, gesturing to me, is Juliana. She is my daughter-in-law and Calla's mother. The legal and moral realities of this situation are now painfully clear. Eamon, Duncan, you will come with me. We have a great deal to discuss with our family lawyers. Genevieve, I suggest you find your own legal counsel. You are going to need it. He turned to me. Juliana, my home is yours for as long as you need it. Kaylin, please see to her immediate needs. Calla, my dear, perhaps you should come with me for now to give you some space from all of this. It was a masterful de-escalation of the crisis, but Calla shook her head. She pulled her hands from mine, but didn't move towards her grandfather. She looked at me, her gaze steady for the first time. I want to stay here with her. The weeks that followed were a surreal navigation of legal proceedings and emotional minefields. My father-in-law, Alistair, was true to his word. He took charge with a quiet, decisive authority. Duncan was immediately fired from the family's wealth management firm, and Alistair himself reported the fraudulent activity to the authorities. Faced with irrefutable evidence, Duncan pleaded guilty to avoid a lengthy trial and is now serving a sentence for embezzlement and fraud. Genevieve fought, of course. She hired a lawyer and tried to claim a portion of the estate based on her marriage to Eamon. But Mr. Kaylin, armed with the trust documents and the forensic accounting reports, dismantled her case with surgical precision. The court ruled that since the estate had never legally transferred to Eamon, her claims as her spouse were invalid. The diamond necklace was returned, along with other assets she had acquired with my money. She left town in disgrace, a pariah in the community she had tried so hard to conquer. Eamon was the most complicated piece of the puzzle. He was broken, a man hollowed out by grief, guilt, and his own weakness. He willingly signed over all remaining assets back to my control and agreed to a formal separation. He didn't fight. He capitulated completely. I saw him not as a villain, but a tragic figure, a good man who made a series of terrible decisions in the face of unimaginable grief,
easily manipulated by his predatory brother and an opportunistic new partner. I didn't have it in me to hate him. I just couldn't see a way back to what we had. He moved into a small apartment near the university, and our interactions became focused on one thing: Calla.
Reconnecting with my daughter was the most difficult and beautiful challenge of my life. She was not the little girl I had left behind. She was a young woman with a decade of memories that didn't include me. At first, she was quiet and withdrawn, caught between the mother she had just regained and the one she had just lost in a storm of lies. We started slowly. I didn't move back into our old house immediately. The thought of sleeping in the bed Eamon had shared with another woman was unbearable. Instead, Alistair gave me the keys to a small guest house on his property, and Calla would spend weekends with me there. We didn't talk about the trauma at first. We just existed together. I took her to the garden at our old home, which had become overgrown and neglected. Together, we started to pull the weeds, to prune the dying roses, to bring it back to life. In the shared, quiet work, we found a new language. She would ask me about a particular plant, and it would spark a memory from her early childhood. "I remember you planting these lavender bushes," she said one afternoon, her hands covered in dirt. "You said they would help me sleep." "They did," I replied, my heart aching with the sweetness of the memory. "You used to put a little sachet of it under your pillow every night." Slowly, she began to open up about the last 10 years. She spoke of her confusion, of her grief, of how Genevieve had been kind at first, but had grown increasingly controlling, systematically removing all traces of me from the house, from their lives. She told me it was to help me move on, Calla confessed one evening. "But I think she was just trying to erase you." The house, which I had dreaded re-entering, became our project. We reclaimed it, room by room. We packed up Genevieve's minimalist, cold decor and brought my warm, comfortable furniture out of storage. We painted the walls, hung my old paintings, and filled the rooms with the scent of fresh flowers from our revitalized garden. We were not just rebuilding a home. We were rebuilding a life. A year after my return, my life is a new kind of normal. I have taken back control of my finances, and with Mr. Kalen's guidance, I am slowly rebuilding the fortune that was squandered. I have started my own landscape architecture firm, finding a renewed sense of purpose in creating beautiful spaces for others. Eamon and I are officially divorced. He's in therapy, working to understand the choices he made. He sees Calla regularly, and they are slowly, carefully rebuilding their own relationship. He has never asked me for a penny, nor for forgiveness. He seems to understand that some things, once broken, can never be fully repaired. Calla is thriving. She decided to take a gap year before college to spend time with me, to make up for the lost years. Our bond is strong, forged not just in the shared DNA of our past, but in the shared work of our present. She's a remarkable young woman, resilient, compassionate, and wise beyond her years. Last week, on the anniversary of my return, she and I took a trip. We drove up into the Sierra Nevada to a place with a clear view of the mountain that had once taken me. We stood there for a long time, the wind cool on our faces, and looked at the majestic, dangerous peak. "Are you afraid?" she asked me. I thought for a moment. No, I'm not. It's a part of my story. It's the place that took me away, but it's also the reason I'm standing here with you now. It taught me that life is fragile, that people can be weak, and that love, true love, is about who comes to find you when you're lost. I had lost my husband, my brother-in-law, and a decade of my life, but I had found my daughter again. And I had, in the most unexpected and painful way possible, found myself. What do you think is harder to forgive? A malicious act of betrayal, or a weakness that allows betrayal to happen? Is it possible to rebuild trust after it has been so completely shattered? I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If this story of survival and reclamation resonated with you, Please give this video a thumbs up and subscribe for more real-life stories. And remember, it is never too late to reclaim the life that is rightfully yours. Thank you for listening.